back to the Jankyard. It's time for the first in a series of videos we're doing about new cards in Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths. Makes me think of the movie Reservoir Dogs. Big Daddy Don, Bodine's truck, the Behemoth. So I'm going to talk about some different cards I've seen in the set. This first video is about cards that fit in an existing deck, and it's my favorite deck. It's the Big Butts. For those that don't know, my favorite archetype is definitely Big Butts, where you take creatures that have big butts, which is a large toughness and small power, so like an 0-5 or a 1-4. And you have cards that allow you to do combat damage with the toughness instead of the power. So what you get is 1 or 2 mana creatures that swing for 4 or 5. They swing like 4/4s or 5/5s. So, really big fan of Big Butts, and I've been using the Bant Big Butts deck in ranked events, or playing on ranked on Arena, but also I've taken them to the Magic Fest events recently, and we've done okay. 3 wins, it's something. But I now want to talk about the cards from Ikoria that I'm excited to put in the Butts deck, or I'm least thinking about. We're going to start with the most obvious one. Aegis Turtle. Look at this thing. It's 1 mana, and it's a 5/5 in our deck. I mean, if you don't remember why it's a 5/5, Wadley, High Alert. They say each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Yes, this is what we want. This is the gloriousness we want. So this becomes a 1 mana 5/5. Somebody jokingly said to me, well, bye-bye Yoke Dogs. Yeah, bye-bye Yoke Dogs. I love Yoke Dogs, don't get me wrong. But it's a 4/4 in our deck. I'm more inclined to get rid of it than the Merfolk Secret Keeper, because the Secret Keeper and the Aegis Turtle are both blue, so we could maybe, refine our mana base a little better there. But yeah, very excited about having the Aegis Turtle. We'll welcome him happily as soon as Ikoria is legal in Standard. We'll welcome him happily into the Big Butts deck. Next up, Lead the Stampede. Definitely going to run this to start, test drive it out. It is for 2 and a green, it's a sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal any number of creature cards from among them and put the revealed cards into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Okay, first and foremost, I mean, this deck runs 25 creatures. It's almost half creatures. So you should be hitting at least a couple. Maybe more. I mean, sometimes you're going to whiff. I mean, it's variance. That's magic. But a lot of times you're going to hit at least a couple creatures. One of the issues I have with the Bant Booty deck, as I like to call it, is, and it's been called by other people, but one of the issues I have is it runs out of gas. I mean, if we get board wiped, get some of our creatures picked off, we run out of gas, and our hand is kaput. I have not had a good way to help kind of refill the hand since Once Upon a Time died, since it was banned. We've tried hardcover. We've tried a few other options. Instead, this I think will be fantastic. And it's only 3 mana. We're going to want to think about refilling our hand once we're about turn 4 or so. So I don't mind this. I'm thinking this is a 3 of. Really excited to play with Lead the Stampede. Next up, okay, now we're getting into the, I'm not so sure. Main Serval. Okay, firstly, it's a 2 mana 4/4 in our deck. It's a 1/4, but of course in our deck it swings as a 4/4. The only creatures we have that are beyond 1 mana are, Deputy of Detention, which is a 3 mana 3/3, but it does an amazing thing. And, the other one is the Fae of Wishes, which is a 2 mana 4/4. But it's a flyer, and it also goes and gets things. Now, the thing I like about the Main Serval, it has Vigilance. So, and one thing a lot of times you do want to do with this deck is you want to block, because At 4 toughness is great for blocking, but you still want to hit when you've got the enabler out. The vigilance is nice, keeps your guy up. I think I'm going to check it out, might test it out a little bit. See, I'm not sold, but we're going to give it a try. And the last one is one definitely considering for sideboard. Now, firstly, if you have not seen the mechanics for Ikoria yet, here is probably the most complex one of the bunch, Companion. Yeah. So Companion says what it says is that you can start with this card outside of the game. So it's in your sideboard, but you have to declare at the beginning of the game, hey, this is my companion. Sounds a bit like Commander. It's not, but it operates in a similar vein. You have to declare it at the beginning of the game, and then at any time you can cast it from outside of the game that one time in the game. It's essentially coming from exile. It's essentially coming from your sideboard, not exile. And so you cast it from your sideboard. Now, each companion in the set has a very clear modifier. And what it says here is each permanent in your starting deck has converted mana cost 2 or less. That's not going to work in our deck because our enablers are 3 mana. But you don't have to play it for play a companion card as a companion. You can just shove it in your deck, and that's what I'm thinking about for Lurrus. I'm thinking it is a sideboard card because A, it has lifelink, but B, if we find our opponent is zapping some of our creatures and wiping our board down and putting a bunch of our creatures into the graveyard, this has got a nice little extra thing. It says the last paragraph. During each of your turns, you may cast 1 permanent spell with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard. So it's like filling up your hand from your graveyard. So that's why I'm actually really excited to put this in the sideboard. I don't like putting a lot of creatures in the sideboard because we have Fey Wishes. And Fey Wishes can't get anything from the sideboard that's a creature. But to me, this is worth it for a couple. Now, the mana cost is going to be a little iffy. Double white. Forget the black. This deck doesn't run black. But it's definitely interesting. Now, that is the fun there. So that's the 4 cards I'm looking at in Butts. Now, there's a couple of extra cards. One is another sideboard card, but it's not just for Butts. It's going to be for a lot of other decks, too. And we'll get to that in a second. This one, Wilt. Wilt says, destroy target artifact or enchantment for 1 and a green. Well, we have Return to Nature, which also does things with Graveyard. And there's other, there's Night of Autumn for 3 mana. There are other options in this vein. The reason I like this more than Return to Nature is most of the time with Return to Nature, you're either killing an artifact or an enchantment, like this. This is cycling for 2. So if you get it and you don't need, you pull it out of your sideboard, and then for whatever reason you don't have any targets, and you don't think you're going to have any targets for a little while, cycle it. Pay 2, draw a card. So I really like Wilt, and I'm definitely going to consider it in sideboard for Butts and for other decks as well. The other card is not for Butts. This is just an additional one I've saw that I want to play and I just want to talk about really quick, and it's the Ozolith. 1 mana legendary artifact. This is for our Simic Ascendancy deck. That is a blue-green deck that relies on the card Simic Ascendancy, and you're proliferating and putting +1/+1 counters on different creatures, and every time you put a +1/+1 counter, you put that many +1/+1 counters on Simic, or you put that many counters on Simic Ascendancy. When Simic Ascendancy gets to 20 counters, and you get to your upkeep, and you have 20 counters on it, you win the game. Ozolith is really going to be great for that deck because it says whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on the Ozolith. Now, in Ikoria, there's a whole bunch of different other counters. Flying is a counter, Hexproof is a counter, Madness is a counter. And it's thinking about those as well. But for the Simic Ascendancy deck, we're strictly thinking about the +1/+1 counters. If you've got a creature that's got 3 +1/+1 counters on it, and somebody kills it, well, you take those counters, you put it on the Ozolith. Okay, you don't get anything from that on Simic Ascendancy, but then since the beginning of combat, you may remove all counters from the Ozolith onto a target creature. So when you do that, you're putting +1/+1 counters on a creature, that gives you that many counters on Simic Ascendancy. So I think it's a nice little addition and a way to save counters off a destroyed creature. So I'm excited to put that in the Simic Ascendancy deck. So that's it for now. This is just our first of several videos to come. We're looking at the new cards in Ikoria. We're very excited. So this is our first Ikoria preview. Oh, wow. Video. So I'm really excited. Check us out on our stream, twitch.tv/JankyardMTG. And don't forget to check Facebook, JankyardMTG, and @JankyardM on Twitter to find out when we're going live. We go live every Wednesday and Sunday, plus some odd days in between there. And also, if you like this video, please like and subscribe down below and click that notification bell so you can find out when we release all the other Ikoria videos. So thanks for joining us. I look forward to talking to you soon.